I live in California, but CARD has 22 centers all over the world. I founded it in 1990, and we have about a staff of 1,200 therapists. About, I don't know, 150 or so are board-certified behavior analysts who are supervising these programs. We have about, I don't know, maybe 2,000 children who receive services from us. The majority of our behavioral services are intensive services, so 25 plus hours a week per child. But we also do assessments and all sorts of other types of treatments, which I might have time to talk about. Okay. So that was supposed to give you credibility, so the rest of the lecture is really paid attention to, okay? All right, so today's presentation, we're going to talk about what is autism, and first we'll talk about how it's seen in general, and then how I see it, and then an overview of some of the treatments, the main treatments, and then go a little bit more into ABA, and then we'll give you a break, and after the break we're going to talk about our curriculum, and then skills. The reason skills is an online program, a web-based technology that we have launched. And the reason that I'm going to talk about it is because when I finish these lectures and I'm in a different country or a different city where there isn't a CARD center, often people ask me, well, how do I access these services? Because this is what we want to do. And so skills is the answer to that. It's a web-based format that you can access everything I've done in the last 20 years, including all of our assessments, our curriculum, everything. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Okay, everybody ready? Happy? Okay. What is autism? Right now, autism is diagnosed according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM-4, and it's in a chapter under the heading of pervasive developmental disorders. Pervasive developmental disorders meaning the child has impairments in more than one area. So it's not just a language disorder or something else, it's two different types of delays occurring together. And in this chapter are 5 different types of disorders. The main 3 that we're going to talk about are autism, Asperger's, and pervasive developmental disorder, NOS, which means not otherwise specified, okay? So autism, typically what happens is a parent, and you guys, how many people here are parents of children with autism? So, okay, and how many people here are teachers, therapists, and so on? So, oh, wow, that's amazing. There's more teachers here. That's incredible. Good for you. That's awesome. Never see that in the States. Parents are always like pushing this forward, you know, because it's a very strange place to be, right? When you have a child. What other disorder is there when you have a diagnosis? You have to go to a conference to learn what to do. You can't really go to a physician or anybody else. They won't tell you, or they'll tell you the wrong thing. So, but I will tell you the right thing today. So autism is the primary or more severe of the diagnoses that we're going to talk about today. And essentially what happens generally is someone notices that the child is delayed in one way or another. Typically it's because the child's language is delayed. And you go see a specialist, and the specialist will go through a series of questions to see, okay, is your child impaired in social interaction? I'm going to give you some examples in a minute. Impaired in communication or language, and then also showing what we call restricted repetitive behaviors or stereotypical behaviors or self-stimulatory behaviors. And if there's a total of 6 or more symptoms in those 3 areas, with 2 of the symptoms being in the social interaction area, then you receive a diagnosis of autism, okay? 6 or more symptoms. Now, the difference with Asperger's disorder is that there is the impaired social interaction, but there is no communication delay per se, no language delay, which is very interesting because actually that's not really true. When we do test our children who have Asperger's on very advanced language tests, so tests that look at social language, then we see a lot of holes and delays. But basically, individuals with Asperger's don't have speech delays that are apparent, okay? So basic speech. And then there's no cognitive delay in Asperger's. So you might ask yourself, is there cognitive delay in autism? And that's actually a very important thing to talk about. I started seeing kids with autism when we had the DSM-2 or 3, so many years ago, and there's been several revisions on the diagnostic criteria for autism since the 90s. And there's the statement, in the chapter on autism, which basically says, is that a plane going by, or is that... Okay, good. I thought it was me somehow becoming radioactive. Okay, so there's this statement in the chapters that says 80% of children with autism also have mental retardation, which is complete garbage. It is total garbage. If you think about the fact that children, all of us, are tested. How do we test for intelligence? We test based on these IQ tests or cognitive measures. How do you do that? You ask questions, or you tell the individual to do something. These are children who are language delayed. Giving them a verbal IQ test is like giving me an IQ test in Chinese. I will definitely score mentally retarded because I will not understand any of the instructions. So the whole concept of having mental retardation with autism is incorrect to begin with. It's just not one of those things that's true. Now, some children obviously do, but it has nothing really to do with the fact there's no absolute correlation. The whole thing as we go through autism and try to understand autism a little bit better is that there is such a huge amount of sensory dysregulation in autism. And there's a lack of language understanding. And so as a result, people perceive individuals with autism as being mentally retarded. Okay? So now, however, with individuals with Asperger's disorder, because there is that language component is present, because these individuals are generally unbelievably intelligent in one area or another, Bill Gates, for instance, Einstein, for instance, those types of people. Have you guys seen the new movie on the guy who made Facebook, Social Network? That guy, from the very beginning, you're looking at that and saying, oh my God, this guy has Asperger's. His social skills are delayed, but he's brilliant, right? And so the individuals with Asperger's have never been associated with cognitive delay. And the truth is, it is one other form, it's just a less delayed form of the spectrum. So now PDD-NOS, there are delays in all three areas, just like autism, but the delays are fewer than 6. So it's sort of a milder version of autism. Now, the whole thing with these series, let me just go through and give you some examples of these things. Like, for instance, communication. What does it mean when we say there's a delay in communication? My child is delayed in language. He also has no eye contact. Okay, that's 2 symptoms in communication. Eye contact being nonverbal communication. My child doesn't interact with anyone, and he also doesn't play with others. See how related they are. I mean, if you don't have language, how are you really going to interact with other people, right? So the symptoms are it's very subjective when you look at a child and you want to give the diagnosis. So it's very important also to see someone when you're trying to get the diagnosis who actually has seen a lot of kids with autism and specializes, because there's a lot of wrong diagnoses being given these days as well.